All right. Well, turn, if you would, to the 106th Psalm. Psalm 106. Psalm 106. I've used this analogy before, and when you, if you were to take a saw and go to a tree and you begin to saw and cut off a branch from a tree, and you take that branch and you throw it onto the ground, what happens? Nothing, right? Nothing initially, that is. The branch will look exactly the same as it did moments prior. Leaves are the same, everything about it is the same. But if you give it time, what you'll notice is the vibrancy, right? And that dark green, perhaps, color will begin to fade. It'll begin to fade. Eventually, that green leaf will begin to turn brown. And then the leaf that would have somewhat strength to it and some flexibility to it, that brown leaf will become rather brittle and break apart rather easily. The wood itself, which was rather strong before, can easily be snapped. And why is that? Because you killed it. The moment that you sawed it and you cut it off from the tree, you took it away from its source of life. And so even though the branch initially might have looked exactly the way it did before, it's dead. It's dead. I believe we can, you and I, if we sat down, I think we could disagree on a number of things. What have you. But I think we can all agree on this, that something very, very wrong has happened to America. Something has gone very wrong. And we're a people who love to push the blame somewhere, right? It's either this president or that president or this Congress or that Congress or that political party or this political party, right? Maybe it's, the lack of diversity or inclusion or equity. The problem is the oppressive capitalist system or the rise of socialism. Or it could be the problems with climate change or white supremacy, domestic terrorism, and I could go on and on and on. But once you go really down that path, what you're really saying is that your problem is physical. And if the problem that we're experiencing is physical, well, then we're going to look for a solution that is physical. And we have heard plenty of that, right? Through the last several months. Well, the midterms are coming up. Right? And so one election will fix this. You just wait and see. We'll show them, and one election, or you know what? Watch 2024. Then we'll get things back in shape. And so if your problem is physical and you think it's physical, then obviously you're going to look for a physical solution. When one has a psychological problem, it becomes necessary to look deeper, and to look deeper into the recesses of that mind. That's what clinical psychologists do. Take, for instance, even perhaps serial killers. What really transpires to bring someone to such violence, right? Over and over and over again. And then I believe it was late in the 70s, the FBI came around with what was called behavioral science, right? To try and really find out what prompts these individuals to do the things they do. And what they've come to find out, by really investigating these people and getting into their minds is Oftentimes you go back and the problems really start with childhood. Maybe that individual was raised, just by a single mother, or maybe that mother was domineering, right? Or if there was a male influence in the home or in the apartment, that individual was abusive, right? Stepfather or what have you, a drunkard. Perhaps there was even sexual abuse that this child had to go through from a stepfather or an uncle or whatever, and the family covered it up and things like that. And you really have to probe, and you have to go and find out, and you come to find out eventually what transpired in this individual's life. But whatever it is, you have to be willing to look, and you got to go into that mind, and you got to probe. You have to be willing to open up that closet door and look inside, knowing full well ahead of time, if you do that and you open that closet door, what you may find is not going to be very pretty. America is broken. It's broken. And that didn't happen just by chance. And so, in this lesson, we've looked at abortion. And we've looked over the last several lessons how it just goes against God and everything that God is. In this particular lesson, I'm going to open up the closet door. Okay? I don't intend to shock anybody. But if we're going to find out why it's broken, then we need to look. And I'm going to take you with me inside this closet. And it's not pretty. And so I very seldom, before any kind of lesson, do I go ahead and I give a warning. But we need to look inside. We need to look inside. We need to understand what's happening, because in our next lesson, okay, then what do we do as believers? I got a Bible, I've got a Spirit, okay, now what? But before that, we need to look. We need to look and see just how serious this is. Why is America broken? Back in 1973, Roe versus Wade became the law of the land. We could say at the time, we meaning society, we could say at the time, we had no idea what was hiding away in the womb. This is 2021, and now there are ultrasounds, and now there are pictures, and we take the pictures, and we take them onto the refrigerators, and we see them and everything, and we have parties and all this stuff. So back in 73, you could say we didn't know what was going on, but not anymore. We know exactly what is hiding away in the womb. And so we can't turn a blind eye to it anymore. America is broken. And it didn't happen overnight. The leaves didn't get brown day one when you cut that branch from the tree. Looked the same. And so 73 and 74 and 75, we looked the same. It died. It died that day. There is a cause and there is an effect to everything. Nothing happens by chance. If you flip a coin and it lands on heads, that's not chance. That's gravity. And who controls gravity? So nothing happens by chance. Nothing. When you take an apple and you bite into it, at some point in time, someone planted a seed. And that seed took root. And from that root, it produced a tree. And that tree produced apples. And someone went and picked that apple off the tree and gathered them together and sent them off to market. And you came to the market and you bought it and you took it and you bit it. But somebody planted the seed. So we're broken. How did this happen? It didn't happen by chance. And folks, that is why history is so important. It's tragic that so many people, and especially young people, don't know history. They just don't know history. It's not being taught, nor do they know biblical history. By the time Israel goes into captivity, that Babylonian captivity, Israel was broken. It was broken. And that didn't happen by chance either. And you have the prophet Jeremiah in the book of Lamentations, and he gives you an eyewitness account as he's walking through the streets of Jerusalem, the city that David built, right? And he's walking through the streets, and you go through Lamentations, and it is disturbing. How did that happen? How did we go from a land where under Solomon, gold was as common as stones? Gold was as common as stones. And we went from that to Jeremiah's account of women taking their children, boiling them, and eating them. Same land. How did that happen? What is so important for us to know that what brought Israel's demise? Israel. You know, Israel. The Israel that God redeemed out of Egypt. He purchased her. He brought her to Sinai. He married her under the huppah, right, of the shofar road and the thunder and the clouds and the lightning and everything. And he handed her the marriage contract, the ketubah, right, the Sinai covenant. And he married her that day. How could her husband treat her like that to the point of utter destruction? He turned his wrath and his fury on a nation that he redeemed, and he turned her into nothing. Why? And if you learn from history, you will come to find out that the very thing that Israel did to provoke God to that kind of wrath is the same thing this country is doing now. What you're about to learn in this lesson, again, I'm going to open up the closet. I don't mean to shock anybody. It is vitally important you understand what is transpiring, what we're doing as a nation under God. Psalm 106, beginning in verse 35. Listen to this very carefully. But they, Israel, his people, but they mingled with the nations and learned their practices and served their idols, which became a snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons and shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And here it is. And the land was polluted with the blood. Father, we lift up this short amount of time to you. Lord, it is very disturbing what, as a nation, we're perpetrating. And I ask even now, because I know what I'm about to say. And so, Lord, other than, I can only repeat to you with fear, in your wrath, remember mercy. We pray these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. One of the early phases of the feminist movement back in the 60s and the 70s, and the National Organization for Women, the NOW, was a woman by the name of Kate Millet. I've introduced you to Kate Millet in a previous volume, right? Lessons prior. But Kate Millet was one of those founders, you could say, of the feminist movement and the National Organization of Women. She was not only a feminist, she was a Marxist. Paul Kenger wrote a book, The Devil and Karl Marx. It's very good, and in it he describes the carnage that Kate Millet caused through the testimony of her sister Mallory. Mallory witnessed all of it and relayed what she saw to this author. Let me share it really quick with you. Quote, "It was clear they desired nothing less," meaning the introduction of the feminist movement, "they desired nothing less than the utter destruction of Western society," she said. How would they do this? They would do so via the method laid out by the cultural Marxists, by the Frankfurt School, by the spirit of Antonio Gramsci, and the long march through the institutions of the culture, from media to education. They would, her words, quote, "invade every American institution. Everyone must be permeated with the, quote, the revolution." Mallory watched it unfold and unravel. She also witnessed the cultural wreckage. Today, she speaks tragically of encountering women in their 50s and 60s who fell for this creed in their youth and now cry themselves to sleep, many countless nights grieving for the children that they will never have, and that they, quote, coldly murdered because they were protecting the empty, loveless futures they now live with no way of going back. "Where are my children?" they cry to Mallory. "Where are my grandchildren?" Those children were sacrificed at the feminist altar of abortion. So Kate Millet, in her day, had this maniacal infatuation with destroying the American family. Husband, wife, children. Just destroy it. Millet was a feminist. She was a Marxist. From accounts from her sister, it's very, very likely she was possessed by at least one demon. Because when a woman's face begins to change and something is moving behind the face and moving it around, that's not normal. She promoted lesbianism. She practiced it. She advocated for gay rights, new spousal relationships. Now, she was married, mind you, but she practiced lesbianism and eventually became bisexual. In fact, she just died a few years ago, and her wife was by her side in France when she died. But Mallory testified those early NOW meetings back in the 70s, that those that would gather together for those meetings in the early days were women that would disrobe and have mass sexual orgies, including bestiality, which I don't have to explain to you. Millet insisted, now keep in mind, the thought is this: the sexual revolution is well underway. So with the sexual revolution, you can have sex with whoever you want or whatever you want. So if you want a man, if you want a woman, if you want a man and a woman, if you want two women, if you want an animal, whatever it is, but it's well underway. Mind you, ladies, if you have sex with a man, it could very well produce what? A pregnancy. So she insisted all women under her tutelage were to receive abortions. All. And this demonically charged position they called, and she insisted that it be called the revolution. That's the revolution. There's an ebook put out by Epoch Times called The Specter of Communism. And there's a section called Communism Promoting Divorce and Abortion, and that's what it does. Let me read to you a portion from that. Advocates of sexual liberation believe that sex should not be limited to the confines of marriage, but unwanted pregnancy presents a natural obstacle to this sort of lifestyle. Contraceptives may fail, so the promoters of unrestricted sex took up the cause of legalizing abortion. Okay? So when someone tells you that abortion is about women's health, they're lying. It has nothing to do with women's health. It has to do with terminating pregnancies. Continuing. The official report from the 1994 UN International Conference on Population Development in Cairo stipulates that reproductive health, quote, implies that people are able to have a satisfying and safe sex life, and that they have the capability to reproduce and the freedom to decide if, when, and how often to do so. At the same time, feminists introduced the slogan, "My body, my rights," to argue that women have the right to choose whether to give birth to or kill their unborn children. The debate expanded from allowing abortion under special circumstances to giving women the power to end human life due to personal inconvenience. By accepting abortion, people have been led to permit the murder of babies and at the same time abandon the traditional understanding that sex is for procreation. Now, one prominent one, well before Millet, was Simone de Beauvoir, who stated decades prior, quote, "Women will not be liberated until they have been liberated from their children." So, ladies, all this time, see, you thought liberation was, right, found in God and salvation and at Calvary, and no. Liberation is when you have the right and the ability to take that life which is inside of you and destroy it. That's liberation. But they mingled with the nations and learned their practices. See, when you know history, and I do, this, what you're saying, that's not how this nation was founded. We learned it. We learned this trash from other nations. They learned their practices and served their idols, which became a snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons and shed innocent blood. The blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with the blood. America is broken. It's broken. Because the land is polluted with blood. The shedding of innocent blood. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign actually discussed infiltrating the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I told you last week, remember, when abortion became legal, what did the pro-abortion people, where did they know they were going to get the most pushback? Catholic Church. Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, for decades has been not only against abortion, it's been against birth control, period. Okay, so watch. So the Clinton 2016 presidential campaign actually discussed infiltrating the Roman Catholic Church in order to turn it towards the progressive belief system. Hillary Clinton herself declared that in order for women to be free to have abortions, quote, deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed, end quote. So she told you back in 2016, your religious belief that you're getting from that Bible of yours, right? That religion of yours that is saying that this abortion is murder. Oh, you must take your Bible and throw that out, because we're going to change this thing. And it should not have come to as any shock, because her predecessor, who was who? President Obama. And Barack Obama and Michelle Obama told you when they got into office, we are going to what? Fundamentally transform the United States of America. Those were their words. So this is no shock. All Hillary was doing was, I'm taking the baton from him, and we're going to continue this on. And we are going to change this country. And in order to do so, that Bible of yours has to go. It has to go. This structural bias that church has planted in you has got to go. So the federal government, let's be frank, has for many, many decades has not been a friend to God, nor the unborn in the womb. In fact, our government, since 2000, have made it very easy for women to go ahead and slaughter their children. In fact, you can even do it at home. Medication abortions. Medication abortions have made it very easy in our country. They've been around since 2000. The abortion-inducing drug is RU-486. It is now responsible for 40% of all abortions. So lady, you don't even have to go to the clinic. You find out you're pregnant, you take the drug, and in essence, that creation that God has placed in you just drops into the toilet. And you can flush it right along with the rest of your excrement. That's how easy it is now. Abortion now is one of the top priorities in the current Biden-Harris administration, or Harris-Biden if you prefer. Quick show of hands. Does anybody know what the Mexico City policy is? Yeah, that's unfortunate. I didn't really know either, and then started getting into this series and things like that. The Mexico City policy is this. It was instituted by President Ronald Reagan decades ago. And what Ronald Reagan said was this: we are not going to take U.S. tax dollars. We're not going to take money from you, okay, your tax dollars, and we are not going to fund abortions in other countries. We are not going to do it. It's called the Mexico City policy. Okay, we're not going to do it. Money stays here. Then Barack Obama got elected. And he took that Mexico City policy and revoked it. So we were spending money in other countries, killing children in other countries with our money. Then 2016 came along. Surprise, no one saw that coming. Donald Trump gets elected. Trump takes the Mexico City policy and says, guess what? We are not going to be spending money in other countries killing babies. And he reinstitutes the Mexico City policy. Well, Trump's not president anymore. I wonder what Joe Biden will do. I don't have to tell you. Dr. Anthony Fauci will. And Fauci, in January, just several months ago, 2021, speaking to the World Health Organization, the WHO, says this, quote, it will be our policy to support women's and girls' sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights in the United States as well as globally. To that end, President Biden will be revoking the Mexico City policy in the coming days as part of his broader commitment to protect women's health and advance gender equality at home and around the world, end quote. So we're back at it again. Congratulations, we're taking your dollars, as many problems as we have here in this country. We're taking our dollars and sending them overseas to other countries so they can kill their babies. What else is this administration up to? because we're just winning points with God left and right? It's called the Equality Act. Thankfully, okay, so the Equality Act, as soon as the new administration came in, that was one of the things. And get this through, I think he said it was like a State of the Union address, get it through so I can sign it, the Equality Act. And it went through the House quickly, and then it hit a wall in the Senate. And thankfully, it hit a wall because of what? The filibuster. Okay? But let's talk, so what does this thing do? Okay? Well, other than advancing Marxist ideological extremism, it is very, very compassionate to the LGBTQ community. And Margot Cleveland, senior contributor to The Federalist, writes this, quote, "The Equality Act escalates the nearly 50-year-old cultural war over abortion, launched in 1973 by the Supreme Court's decision in Roe versus Wade. Although the legislation avoids the word abortion and employs the more genteel euphemism of reproductive services, the Equality Act threatens to federalize the demands of the abortion lobby that abortion be performed at even religious healthcare facilities. The Equality Act accomplishes this goal by defining sex to include pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical condition, with the latter term interpreted by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and federal courts to include abortion. The Equality Act then requires public accommodations, which include healthcare systems to treat abortion as no different from medical treatments that do not end the life of another human being. Or in the jargon of the Equality Act, quote, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions shall not receive less favorable treatment than other physical conditions, end quote. So there you have it. So ladies, under the Equality Act, you can go in and receive an abortion because they're going to look at that child in your womb as like a cancer. It's just a cancer or a tumor. It's something that must be extracted from your body. It's some kind of sewage in you that needs to come out. I wish I could tell you that was all. I wish I could tell you it doesn't get worse. But I told you we're going to open up the closet, and what we find in there is not going to be very pretty. According to CBN News, April 19, 2021, quote, the Biden administration is allowing university researchers and government scientists to use human fetal tissue for medical research. The Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, is reversing a Trump-era policy that had banned the use of fetal tissue from elective abortions. So let me interject. When Donald Trump got into office, the administration came to find out that the University of California, San Francisco was conducting research using government dollars. And not only that, but they were using dismembered body parts from babies. And Trump found that out. The administration found that out, and he put a stop to it. Put a stop to that. Okay? So imagine the US government was trafficking body parts to this university for money. Okay, according to the HHS announcement, government scientists now will be able to resume research that uses tissue from elective abortions. Scientists at universities also can now apply for federal grants without getting approval from a special ethics panel for any such work. David Daleiden. Daleiden is a pro-life activist out in California. He's done a lot of research, and he went undercover with Planned Parenthood, and he dug up a whole lot of stuff on politicians out in California and other places like that. But according to his report, this is what he found. He found the University of Pittsburgh was doing a study and conducted experiments using 5-month-old scalps from aborted fetuses, which were stitched and grafted on the backs of lab rats and lab mice to show how long they could keep the hair growing. Some, according to the report, some of these scalps were 22 weeks old when they were killed and mutilated. So you're talking 22 weeks, what is that? 5, almost 6 months old. So a baby at 5, 6 months old can feel the pain. They were killed, and then they had their scalps removed. At this point, you may think, I can't believe this. But if you go to, and he provided the website, the centerformedicalprogress.org, the pictures are up there. So this university got grant money, federal grant money, and lots of it. I wonder where they got who gave them the clearance on that. I wonder who signed off on that for the University of Pittsburgh to do this research on aborted fetuses and scalps and things like that. You ready? The National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Doesn't that sound familiar? National Institute of Allergy and Infectious. Man, I've heard that one come up a lot over the past year and a half. That's Dr. Anthony Fauci. And in fact, it was Fauci. He was the one who determined the grants. He was the one who actually monitored how this grant money was being used. Isn't that something? Every time we turn around over the past several months, we keep finding out that anything that is evil and is ungodly, whether it's gain-of-function research, right? Designing a coronavirus in a lab, or whether now it's taking scalps off of babies, his name's always attached to this thing. So he was the one. He signed off on the grants. And it was Planned Parenthood that was the organization that was dismembering the body parts and then sending them off and shipping them off to the University of Pittsburgh. Delighton says, quote, "These scalps most likely came from partial birth abortions." That means partial birth, like we're talking 9 months. Or babies delivered alive and whole. And even when you think at this point, that's not possible, there are governors who say they want to pass the law that should a baby survive the abortion and is alive outside the womb, that the mother should have the right for a certain amount of time to terminate that life outside the womb. America is broken. It's broken. Edie Heupel, Center for Renewing America, writes this: "One of the oldest fetal tissue procurement firms, the ABR, Advanced Bioscience Resources. The company makes millions every year by harvesting organs like lungs, livers, eyeballs, and brains from aborted babies and reselling them at a profit. Even more appalling is an ABR employee complaining about the difficulty of identifying the sex of aborted babies. We only check external genitalia, and if it's not there, we have no way of telling. The fact that technicians are unable to identify the sex of aborted babies is no surprise to those familiar with the barbaric nature of abortion procedures, which require clinic staff to piece together mangled remains of babies after their limbs and organs are torn apart. When an ABR employee reassured the FDA they were working with doctors who performed late-term abortions, he admitted some tissue was unusable from a procedure that injects a poison called digoxin into the baby, destroying its cells and tissues. Once the chemical has done its work, an intact dead baby is delivered. This method makes fetal tissue specimens unusable in experiments. With digoxin off the table, the likelihood partial birth abortions were used is sickeningly high. So they don't want the poison injected in their baby. Don't do that, because if you inject the poison into it, you're going to kill all the cells and tissues. So we need it fresh. So in other words, let the baby develop. Let the baby develop 6 months, 7 months, 8, 9 months if necessary, and then kill it. But don't put the poison in it. I'm trying to figure out when I read this, how this is not child sacrifice. How is this not child sacrifice? How can we, or anybody, wag a finger at a tribe in Uganda or the deepest recesses of the Amazon or something like that, and we wag a finger at them when we're doing this? Why? Because we're so civilized? Does this sound civilized to you? Letting a child develop as long as possible, don't poison it, but kill it, because we need the body parts. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons and shed innocent blood. The blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols. So, hey, are we taking our children and throwing them into some kind of temple fire? Are we taking our children and slitting their throats and draining the blood out into a basin and then going out into the cornfield and pouring the blood out onto the cornfield, asking for the gods to give us a bountiful harvest and things like that? No, we're not doing that, but we might as well be. America is broken. It's broken. And what's disturbing is how many Christians, and it's just, can't you just give me a little Jesus loves me, this I know, on Sunday morning, and let me go home and watch Netflix? I don't want to hear that. You're disturbing me with this. And the children are getting slaughtered for money. For money. Edie Heupel, in this report, listed 10 shocking examples that came from the latest emails uncovered by Judicial Watch's FOIA request. That's Freedom of Information Act request. So they filed for Freedom of Information Act, which of course it was granted. So they got government emails that went through them that the government was hiding from all of us. And you'll find out why in a moment. 1, the FDA paid $2,000 per baby. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration paid an estimated $2,000 per individual baby, at times adding up to $12,000 per box of harvested organs. Email records confirm the FDA agreed to prepay Advanced Bioscience Resources, the ABR, likely the country's largest fetal tissue trafficking firm, an estimated $2,000 for each aborted child, adding up to $12,000 per average box of tissue with shipping and packaging fees. Number 2, the FDA bought organs of dismembered babies.